I think it gave me a sense of meaning and purpose, and that's one thing that really has never changed is I very much believe that God brings meaning and purpose to my life. It's just that I am now in the driver's seat rather than other people. Hi, my name is Mike, and this is why I deconstructed. I grew up like religion was around, but I wasn't actively participating really in religion. Life as a kid wasn't very great, but when I turned 19 is when that was my salvation story. And it was really going to a church service. My mom had invited me. It was Mother's Day, and I didn't have anything to give her. And so she's like, it's okay, just come to church with me. And it was just something about what the pastor was preaching. And that was the day that, as the church says, I gave my life to Jesus. But it was really the first time that I had felt loved and in community. And getting involved in the church, there were so many good things and so many people that were reaching out and were caring and were loving and were inviting me to things. And it felt like, it really did feel like for the first time I had found something that I was looking for. And I felt loved and I felt connected and I felt a sense of security. I got saved. It was a very charismatic Pentecostal church, and immediately felt like, oh, I want to do this. I have this calling to ministry. I want to go into ministry. And so I jumped in, like within 6 months, I was in a ministry school. And, we were told things like, you need us more than we need you. Like, you can't do this without me. This is from our leadership. And it was very controlling and very authoritarian. But again, like, these people had the reins to shape my early belief system. And so I went along with it. And they had us do this, they called it a weekend of purpose. It was basically like ministry boot camp. And there was sleep deprivation and physical and verbal abuse over a weekend to prepare us for the rigors of ministry. And this was very re-traumatizing to me from things that I had gone through in my past. But again, it's like, I have to push through because this is what God wants. And it was these people that were in control that were telling me this is what God wants. So that was where it started. But this is what I had to do because this is the fight that God called me to fight, is what I told myself. And then when I started studying for licensure to get my pastoral license, I really didn't agree with a lot of the stuff that was in there when it came to the original sin or the heaven and hell, penal substitutionary atonement, the church's stance on LGBTQ plus issues. None of it really sat well with me. And I realized when I was working with my coach to help me through it, they didn't care what I believed. The denomination just wanted me to answer the questions in the correct way. And so as long as I answered the questions in the correct way, I'd get a gold star. And so it had always been this thing of I needed to be good. The way that I think doubt is framed in the church is if you start to take one small piece out, you are in danger of everything crumbling. It's framed in a way that doubts are wrong, questions are wrong, internal feelings are wrong. You have to believe. I've always been a proponent of, you can belong before you believe. You can belong and you don't have to believe the same way. But that's not how it was framed for me. And so I was terrified that everything would get lost, everything would be lost. And it was so freeing to have somebody to say oh my gosh, I'm feeling the same way, let's talk about it. So, and even doing this, I was terrified to even tell my wife, who had grown up in the church. And when that shoe finally dropped, she's like, oh my gosh, me too. So there was a few moments, where it was like, okay, this feels nice. I think what did it for me, the moment where everything clicked and I'm like, okay, this doesn't feel right, is 2020, it's the things that, I mean, it started really with the way that the church responded to some of the things that President Trump was doing in his first term, like the travel ban on Muslim countries, and the way that he was targeting, the LGBTQ community and all that stuff. And I watched the church, and I watched people that I loved and people that I cared about and people that had like mentored me just full on get in line behind it, and just making excuses for this terrible dehumanizing rhetoric and treating people in the complete opposite way of what Jesus does in the Gospels. And then they had a chance to make amends for that in the next time when he was up for re-election, and they doubled down again. And it was too much for me. I couldn't take it, because just seeing the hypocrisy in what is preached and what you're telling me versus how you're actually living your life was so incongruent. I kind of toyed with, like, during COVID, when things were shut down in our church, I preached a series on justice and what does that look like, and people didn't like it. And really quickly, they're like, okay, this is enough. Let's stop talking about this. I started being more vocal on social media, and we had a few people were very upset and left the church. And then we had, some backroom discussions where people were coming and saying, hey, you're being too much on social media. You're stirring the pot. Don't post stuff like this. And I'm like, this is such low stakes. Like, I have no platform at all. And what I'm saying is, hey, this guy that just gassed a bunch of protesters to stand in front of a church and hold a Bible upside down, who's claiming to be a Christian leader, what if he turned it right side up and read from the words of Jesus? And if he's claiming to be if he is this person that you all say he is, why is he not trying to open that book and read the words and bring hope to people right now? And that was, you get your well, you need to pray for him, and you need to pray for your leaders, and Romans 13, God's in control, and just a lot of spiritual gaslighting, spiritual bypassing to try to get me to be quiet. So in the church, we're really quick to say, oh, you're a sinner, you're a terrible person, you're worthless, you're not good, right? And you need to be good. And I never understood why we started the story there, when God's story with humanity started with goodness, that God created humanity and it was good. And I never understood why we couldn't start at that point. And so honestly, it was a mix of that and going through going back to school, getting my master's degree, and this concept of Carl Jung says it to be, I would rather be whole than be good. And it was the thought that I could embrace every part of who I am, even the bad parts that the church says are not good, and that's okay. It's okay for me to be fully human. It's okay for me to be present in my body. And I think also an understanding of the fact that the church tried so hard to tell me that, to not listen to myself, to not listen to my heart, to not listen to those gut feelings. And when I started to see those things as like, this is how God created me. God gave me the ability to, those alarm bells to go off and say, hey, this is not right. And so I think it was a connection back to the fact that God has created me for this reason, to be in this space, to utilize everything that he's given me to just be human. You can throw around the term deconstruction, and the first thing is, oh, you're not Christian anymore. We don't love Jesus anymore. And well, if you're deconstructing, well, where are you going to church? Because you have to go to church. Like, don't forsake the fellowship of the believers. And I'm like, okay, first of all, that's not what that verse means. But also, like, I don't. It's control. But honestly, I think at the heart of it for a lot of people is they have questions too, and they have doubts too, and they're seeing somebody else do it, and they're getting upset because they've never been able to, and they're repressing that part of themselves that so desperately wants to ask the questions. And I don't know. I just want people to. I want people to be free to do it. There was I think it was in the book Velvet Elvis by Rob Bell. He talks about your Christianity being like a brick wall. And if you take one brick out to examine it, you compromise the entire structural integrity of the whole thing. Rather than if you view the different parts of your theological belief system as a trampoline, and I can remove several springs and still bounce, right? And I can replace those springs, I can put something else in there. And so I think the church says deconstruction is bad because you lose your faith. But all throughout the Bible, I see people doubting, and I think that we find God in the questioning, we find God in the searching. And in that process of deconstruction, I have reconstructed something that is healthier. Reconstructed something that's healthier than the church could have ever given me, because I found it on my own. You know, coming back to what I said about like, I felt loved. I did feel loved. I think a lot of it was show, because I really believe for a lot of these people, I was a project. I was somebody to be saved and taken off the street, and you know, we're gonna make him this good story. I don't feel like the negative parts of me were ever accepted and loved. And going through that deconstruction and reconstruction, I see that God is loving and accepting of every part of me. The parts that I've always tried to keep hidden, the parts that the church never wanted to see, the parts that people always wanted to push away. I have one friend who's in the ministry. He's not on the same journey that I am, but he's the only person that hasn't tried to make me feel like I'm a bad person. He's stuck close to me. He listens, he asks questions, he wants to understand where I'm coming from. And I love that. I love that he and I can still connect. And even though we have different belief systems, it's not a bad thing. I am still Christian. So a lot of people say that's not the case. I think what I've come to understand is I don't have to be in the pews to be present, you know, and you know, I work as a therapist now, and I love to integrate spirituality into therapy if that's what people want, and I love to help people that are working through spiritual abuse and religious trauma, and finding God in the muck and the mire, finding God in the places where they never thought they would. But my faith looks a lot differently. I mean, our two little kids, they know who God is, they know who Jesus is. But what we teach them is different. You know, my 7-year-old doesn't need to hear that she's a worthless sinner, that Jesus is that. She doesn't need to hear that she's a worthless sinner, and she doesn't need to hear that God murdered his son so that she can be forgiven, right? We're not going to do that. And so it looks a lot different. It looks like, how can we show up for people? How can we be there for people who are hurting? How can, you know, this is what Jesus did for people. This is how Jesus showed up for people. So this is what we can do. It doesn't look like stressing out about being at church at a certain time every Sunday. It looks like just living out the words that we see that were written in red. If you're on this journey, you're doing a really brave and courageous thing. And trust your intuition, trust your gut, trust your heart. I know that the Bible, or not your pastor, your leaders, the people that are in your life are probably telling you can't trust those things, but God has given you a central nervous system, and God has given you the ability to understand and believe, and for alarm bells to go off when something doesn't feel right. And so lean into those things, listen to those things, find somebody that's safe that you can process it with. You don't have to go through this by yourself. There's a huge community of people all over the internet, and probably closer than you think you are, than you think there are, that are going through this too, and could use a friend also.